Welcome to my class. In this particular video session, we will talk about computing interface. In computing, an interface is a shared boundary across which two or more separate components of a computer system exchange information. The exchange can be between software, computer hardware, peripheral devices, humans, and combination of these. User interface. A user interface is a link between the user and the computer. It allows the user and the computer to communicate with each other. The user interface controls the way how data and instruction are entered into the computer and how the computer presents information on the screen. There are different types of interfaces. The first one is character user interface, graphical user interface, menu driven interface, form based interface, and the last one is natural language interface. But we can divide all interfaces practically into two parts. The main types of user interfaces are command driven interface, command line interface, and character user interface CUI. All these are one and the same thing. The second category is graphic user interface GUI. The third one is natural language interface, which we are not going to cover in this particular video. CUI and GUI are user interface used in connection with computers. CUI is the precursor of GUI and stands for character user interface, where user has to type on keyboard to proceed. On the other hand, GUI stands for graphical user interface, which makes it possible to use a mouse instead of keyboard. The first one is command driven interface or character user interface or command line interface. These are one and the same thing, as we already said it. The command driven interface is text based interface where the user types in commands via the keyboard. Commands are usually typed as one line at a time. Examples of command driven interfaces are MS-DOS and Unix. It looks like this one. As you keep on typing on your keyboard, you can see that the interface looks like this. Now, what are the advantages of command line interface? The first one, command line interface is faster than using menus and icons on a GUI interface. Command line interface requires less memory because of no graphics. The third one, experienced users can use command line interface faster than others. The fourth one, complex commands can be entered to customize the operating system for a particular user. These are some of the advantages of command line interface. Now, what are the disadvantages of command line interface? First, people with limited knowledge of DOS may find this interface difficult to use. DOS is disk operating system. Second, Typing all commands can be very time consuming. Third, an error in typing requires the user to retype the whole command. This is time consuming and frustrating as well. Commands have to be learned and memorized, especially in Unix where there are hundreds of commands. The interface is not attractive compared to GUI interface. These are some of the disadvantages of command line interface. The second one is graphical user interface. All these are examples of graphical user interface. GUI is an abbreviation for graphical user interface and it is pronounced as GUI. It is a user interface that includes graphical elements such as windows, icons, and buttons. This term was created in the 1970s to distinguish graphical user interfaces from text-based ones, such as command line interface. The graphical user interface is a form of user interface that allows user to interact with electronic devices through graphical icons instead of text-based user interfaces typed command labels. GUI is a system of interactive visual components for computer software. A GUI displays objects that convey information and represent action that can be taken by the user. The objects change color, size, or visibility when the user interacts with them. Example of a GUI. It consists of picture-like items. Some common GUIs are the ones associated with Microsoft Windows, Mac operating systems, Chrome operating system, and Android. Now, what are the main features of a GUI? A graphical user interface contains 6 important features, including a pointer, a pointing device, icons, desktop, windows, and menus. A GUI denotes a collection of computer programs that utilize a computer's graphic capabilities to make programs easier to use. Now, what is the importance of GUI? A graphical user interface is important because it allows higher productivity while facilitating a lower cognitive load. It does not put load on your brain. Once you see it, you can perform that action very easily. Graphical user interfaces allow users to interact with computers using a mouse or other input tools. GUI is used in the actions in a GUI are usually performed through direct manipulation of graphical elements. Beyond computers, GUI are used in many handheld mobile devices such as MP3 player, portable media player, gaming devices, smartphones, and smaller household devices, office and industrial controls. Who invented GUI? The GUI was first developed at Xerox PARC by Alan Kay and Douglas Engelbart and a group of other researchers in 1981. These are the pictures of Douglas and Allen. Later, Apple introduced the Lisa computers with a GUI on January 19, 1983. Now, what is the difference between command-driven interface and graphical user interface? On the one side, we will talk about command-driven interface, their disadvantages. On the other side, we will talk about graphical user interface, GUI, its advantages. Command-driven interface, they are difficult to understand and use, whereas graphical user interface, they are easy to understand and use. Command-driven interfaces are not attractive looking. Graphical user interface are very attractive in look. Command-driven interfaces are monocolor typed characters, whereas graphical user interface, they are in multicolored objects. Command-driven interface, they are not user-friendly, whereas graphical user interface, they are user-friendly. Command-driven interfaces are faster than using menus and icons on a GUI interface. Graphical user interface, they are slower than using command-driven interface. Command-driven interface requires less memory, whereas more memory is required in case of graphical user interface because they contain number of images. Now we move on to the third one, that is menu-driven interface, MDI. But please remember that MDI, menu-driven interface, it is a part of graphical user interface. Though we are mentioning it separately, but it is a part of graphical user interface. Menu-driven interface look like this, as you must have seen it in the case of Windows, MS Word, MS PowerPoint, MS Excel. We see that this particular ribbon, this ribbon contains number of menus. We call this thing as menu-driven interface. Here you can see another example of menu-driven interface. This is one more example of menu-driven interface. The moment you click over this menu, you can open Edit, and the moment you click over Edit, you can see number of drop-down menus appear on the screen. This is the case of menu-driven interface. A menu is a set of options presented to the user of a computer application to help the user find information or execute a program function. Menus are common in graphical user interfaces such as Windows or the Mac operating system. The advantages of menu interface. The main advantage of menu-driven system is that they are easy to use. You keep on clicking the icons, and the moment you click over a particular icon, the sub-menu opens up. You can again shift to sub-menu, and then you can click over the required menu, and you click over that, then it performs the desired function. The main disadvantage of menu-driven system is getting to one particular option can often involve working through many different menu screens. The next one is form-based interface. Again, this is a part of graphical user interface. Here you are given one particular form and you can fill up the required information. You can interact with the computer through this particular form. Now, what is a good user interface? Clear communication between the user and the computer is the working premise of good user interface design. Good user interface helps in preventing user errors. It makes important information obvious and it contributes to ease of learning and use. Now, what are the characteristics of a good user interface? This is the user interface of iPhone. A good user interface needs to have the following. The icons must be clear, concise, familiar, responsive, consistent, and attractive. These are some of the characteristics of a good user interface. What are the traits of a bad user interface? The first one is unresponsive. The moment you click over one particular icon, it does not result into response. The icon appears to be complicated. It means it is very hard for people to understand. Confusing. It will be unclear about where the visitor should go next. Inconsistent design. Object will look different, throwing users off. User move away from the screen. These are some of the traits of bad user interface. But in this particular video, we are not talking about natural language interface because that is used in artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.